Okay, we're getting close to the end of this series. This is episode 9 of 10. And I just thought I'd do a little bit of a recap for a start off. There are 4 reasons why I think that I had as many invitations to different things, met different people, and just lots of opportunities that came my way, not just through good fortune, but because I was in the right place at the right time, and there was reasons for that. Okay, so the first thing I still maintain, travelling on your own automatically means that you're the vulnerable person and people will approach you and talk to you. Plus, you're on your own, so there is an empathy, a natural human empathy, where someone is sitting on their own. Oh, I wonder what the story is. Okay, so that's the first thing. Travelling on your own, I think, creates opportunities for conversations that you wouldn't have if you were with 2 or even 3 or 4 more people. The less likely that anybody's going to talk to you. The second thing I still maintain, motorbike. It's sexier than a car. It's sexier than a bicycle. It's interesting. It creates conversation. People are interested. And the further you are away from home, the more they are interested. So motorbike, another one. Age, I still think, and through a lot of experience, I think this is absolutely true, that if I had been 30 years younger, a lot of the opportunities and invitations that I had just wouldn't have happened. I was too near the age of the people who invited me to different things, and it probably could have come over as a bit of a chat up or whatever if I was only 30. But because I was doing these rides when I was 60, that didn't come into the equation. So the invitations were just perfectly genuine. Most of the ladies that I had loads of fun with were quite young, although some a lot older. But again, non-threatening guy of my age, on his own. I was the one that was more vulnerable, so therefore the invitations came and the opportunities came from there. So because of that, I just wanted to share with you a few funny stories that I had, in particular with the female variety. But I thought I'd explain exactly why that happens anyway. First and foremost, I enjoy conversations with the female variety much more than the male variety, okay? I firmly believe that males, when we get talking to each other, we've got egos, so if you start the conversation saying, oh, you know, today I've ridden 400 miles, some idiot will turn around and say, oh, I did 500 miles once, and it wasn't a competition. I didn't want it to be a competition. I wasn't bragging. I was just making a statement. But men just seem to have that ego thing, and it drives me a bit mad. Plus, the other thing is men, they have a habit of talking about the same subjects. If it's not football, it's definitely women. And it goes on, okay? So I've always been like this, that I enjoy female company. Any age, just find ladies, girls, just much, much, much more interesting, pleasant conversations. They're interested in what you're doing. So it just happens that way. Also, travelling on my own, I'm a massive believer that I've got my own business, which is a very small business, insurance brokers, but been doing it for like 39 years now. And there's just me and 2 ladies who work for me, and they've been with me for like 30 years and 24 years respectively. And again, I still say things like, even from a very young age, I was never a team player. I was always a loner. I was perfectly happy in my own company, hence the solo motorbike rides, even though I've had to wait all these years for the right opportunity, to have the money, to have the time, because that's the most important part of it. And that's what happened from there. So, lots of funny little stories about meeting ladies. One really cute one was I was in southern Germany, and I was actually on my way to Croatia. And pulled into a petrol station, was filling up with petrol, and a group of girls jumped out of a minibus. I thought it was possibly the equivalent of a hen party, and it was. One of them was getting married, and she was actually dressed more or less as a bride, not actually in a wedding dress as such, but all in white and clearly the bride. And she came over, and in German, because she didn't know I was British, asked me if I would dance. I replied by saying my Deutsch was as clear as my Japanese, so she'd have to explain that in English. And she said, oh, no. She said, well, oh, sorry. She said, it's a tradition in Germany that on the eve of our wedding, we dance with as many males as we can. So I said, all right, Cove. So we're in this middle of a petrol station. I've got 15 girls jumped out of a minibus, and I've got to do a dance with this girl. So I do a dance with this girl. They all think it's funny. They all think, they then ask because I'm English, because I'm of a certain age, because I'm on my own, because I'm on a motorbike, all of those things. They asked where I was going. I said, oh, I'm on my way to Croatia. And they said, wow, that's like hundreds of miles away or whatever. I said, yeah, so what, and well, what's your plan? Have you got anything booked? And I said, no, I said, don't have anything booked. I said, some days I wake up and I've got a plan to do 400 miles, but if it's raining, I don't do any. Some days I've got a plan to only do 100 miles, but when I get on the bike, I suddenly find that I'm having one of those moments when I feel like I'm 16 again, and I end up doing 500 miles in that day. I've got total flexibility. So one of them laughed and said, so if you want to, you could stay over here this evening. So I said, well, yeah, I could do. I said, but no particular reason. I said, I've just stayed in a hotel just a few miles down the road. I've just got on the road. I've just put petrol and I'm ready to go. No. You've got to come with us. I said, okay, what are we doing? And sure enough, they were going to spend the whole day, that was the morning, the whole day on like a hen's party. But it was not like our hen parties, if you'll bear with me. It was much more sedate. It was much more controlled. But it was fun. Okay. So please come with us. You can be our shepherd. We're your flock of sheep. You can be our shepherd. Oh, yeah, I can do that, no problems at all. So bike gets dropped off then to the university grounds, which is where they all lived, a couple of miles down the road, and off we go in this minibus. We're going round coffee shops. We were doing all sorts of stuff in the afternoon, visiting relatives of hers, which was really good fun because suddenly they've got this 60-year-old English guy with them and everybody wants to know who the hell is he and why is he here? And everybody's joking around at that. And they were just a great bunch of girls. Long story short, the day went on and on and on and on and on until later on that evening, when we get back to the university, or should I say early evening, they were about to go out then. And they asked the university janitor, the guard that looked after there, they said, this guy wants to stay overnight. Give him a room. No, he said, impossible. So they threatened then, and in this university there was a girls' dormitories, girls' rooms, and males' rooms, and never the twain shall meet. So they threatened him and said, if you don't give him a room in the male area, he's staying overnight with us. We're not coming back until about 1 o'clock in the morning. You won't even be on duty. That's what we're going to do. Oh, and he said, oh, okay, fine. So he gives me a key, gives me a number of a room, and that's where I'm going to stay. Okay, fine. So off we go then for the evening. We have a great laugh. They were all just lovely girls, really well-behaved, nice. Parents would be proud of them. They were just great. We just had loads of fun. We get back late at night, and I've got a key to this room. Okay, so I go into this room, and I suddenly realise, whoa, there's stuff in here. This is not an empty room. This is someone's room, okay? But it's 1 o'clock in the morning, so the someone hopefully is not out having a drink. Perhaps he's not staying there at the moment. But it did occur to me, and it made me have a pretty uneasy night's sleep, that at any moment some 6'6" German could walk through the door and find me in his bed. Now, if he didn't speak much English, perhaps he wouldn't have even given me the option of talking to him. I may have just got flattened, but it was a funny one anyway. Didn't happen, wasn't a problem at all. Woke up the following morning, said my goodbyes to 15 girls. Great opportunity. Some other stuff that was more on a one-to-one makes me laugh, this little part of the story. You guys, you know who you are. You are married, and you're a salesman, or you're a guy that just travels on business, okay? And when you do so, you sometimes turn up at a hotel on your own, miles away from home. You're not going to get caught. and there's females around, and A, B, C. Right, I got news for you. The ladies are exactly the same, okay? So if your wife or your partner, if she is a travelling salesperson, goes away on business trips, stop kidding yourself that she might be behaving herself all the time. I've seen plenty of times when I've walked into a hotel, lady on her own, eating at the restaurant, and again, I still maintain, because of my age, it's worked for me, that I've been able to have an innocent evening with someone and a really nice, pleasant time. And that is because I've been able to go over to them and say, hey, listen, you're eating on your own. I was going to eat on my own. Do you want me to join you? I didn't say, do you mind if I join you? I actually asked, do you want me to? If you want me to, we'll talk about the world. If you don't want me to, I'm going to go and sit over there and you can stay here, and neither of us have come to any harm. Invariably, on that type of option, you get a yes. I can't remember getting a no. I think I've had yeses in the main. And then we're back to square one. Even though I'm staying in a hotel, I'm now talking to someone. I've got somebody's attention. I can find out what they do, how their lives differ to mine, whether I'm in Romania or Moldova or Turkey, wherever I may be. The usual thing I'm doing is staying in Airbnbs, which automatically gives me the option and the opportunity, sorry, not the option, the opportunity to talk to local people, eat their food, see what their homes are like, see what their lifestyle is like. You learn so much from that. But even in a hotel, lady on her own, quite often, and through conversations, you know full well that they've had their moments of fooling around. We'll leave it like that. Okay. So lots of options, lots of opportunities I've had of talking to different ladies like that. Then I've met sweet old ladies that are probably my favourites. Maybe the 25 to 30-year-olds are the best. But sweet old ladies take a lot of beating, to say the least. They have such good fun with them. And usually I meet those through my interest of World War II. I've usually end up in a museum somewhere to do with World War II and talk to someone who clearly was of that age where they would have knowledge and they would have had an experience of World War II firsthand. Most probably they may have been very young, but they'd have stories to share and they'd have stories to tell from there. So that was always an opening conversation for me anyway, because I could tell them why I was interested in it, and conversations would evolve from there. Break, just 1 second, please. Okay. Who was the other women I was going to talk about?
Talk about either the lady from Levica or you wrote the note.
Petra I was going to talk about. Petra?
Yeah, also talk about Petra when you met her in the airplane.
Yeah. I just went blank for a second there. Don't go blank normally, do I? Just normal. What's it? Oh no, Petra was the other one. Now I'm going to do Petra afterwards on the next one, or I could do it on this one. How much have I done so far?
You're on 14 minutes.
14 minutes. Okay, so 2 more stories of not Petra. Petra's going to be on the last programme. So 2 more stories of girls. Which ones are funny? Or not necessarily funny, seriously ones.
You already talked about the Romanian.
Yeah. Did that one. Did the police lady with the boobies.
Novama.
Hey?
Novama.
Oh, yeah, Movama. I can do Movamai. And one more. Movamai and one more.
Even
haven't got a specific story about that. I've just started saying sweet little old ladies.
It was in Norway, but you talked about Norway.
Yeah, I did the Norwegian one. I'll do the funny story about leaving the note. I don't care. I'll do that one. So do that one, and then what did we? Hey?
Novama.
Oh, Movama, yeah, Movama, and then finish with writing books and talks, and that'll be the end of this one. Okay, so to get it in my head now before we start, I don't want to break again. What am I doing first? Movama second. What am I doing first? Hey? No, not Ladita. No. What did we just say 2 seconds ago? Little old lady. I know, little old lady.
The note.
Oh, yeah, the note one.
It was in Italy.
It was in Italy, yeah. The note one, and then... Why am my head... Why's my head going blank all the time? So I'm got to get this into my head, the three things.
Italy, Novama.
Books. Italy, Movamai, books. Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So one great little story was I was in Italy and I was having a cup of coffee, as I do. And I'm sitting there having a cup of coffee, and this wonderful lady was sitting a few meters away from me, straight out of a 1930s movie, Eva Gardner lookalike, reading a book, totally peaceful, nice sunny day, gorgeous looking lady, probably in her 80s, stunning. And that would have been the end of the story, really. I would just looked over and just thought, wow. And she was just a picture. She was just at peace with herself, reading her book, sipping away in a cup of coffee, and this gorgeous, gorgeous little Italian village. One of those great moments where I just sat there and I thought, wow, just take in all of this. And it would have been the end of it. However, by coincidence, whatever you want to call it, by fate, I would say, the waiter came over and said, can I get you anything else? I said, no. He said, are you sure? I said, yep. And he actually sort of said, are you sure? And I went, actually, I'll tell you what you can do for me. Could I have a piece of paper and a pen? He said, yep, most definitely. Yep. Gave me a piece of paper off his pad and paper. And I wrote, and this might sound really corny. I don't care that it sounds corny. It's irrelevant. It's a great memory for me, and I would like to think that the lady concerned enjoyed the moment and has a nice memory of it as well. And I wrote a little note to say, just in case nobody has told you today how beautiful you are, I'm telling you. And I just signed it, and that was it, okay? Silly little note. But it made me smile because I was telling her what was in my head, and that was nice. So as I left, I had folded the piece of paper up, and I went over to her and said, do you speak English? Not surprisingly, she said yes, because in Italy, virtually everybody speaks English. And I said, great. I said, just written you a little note. I said, will you please do me a favor? I said, please do not open that until I've gone. Have a nice day. And she said, oh, thank you. And she put the piece of paper down, and I crossed the road, got on my motorbike and rode off. Didn't look back at her, didn't do anything at all, just rode off. It was just one of those moments. And I'd like to think that she smiled. I'd like to think that it just, I'm not saying made her day, it wasn't that important, but if it just made her smile, it was worthwhile doing. Now, something that made me smile, sometimes I'm the one that's the comedian, sometimes I'm the one making all the jokes, but sometimes it cuts the other way. And we had something for my 60th birthday, which was a real surprise to me. There was a group of ladies in North Wales, of which I knew, I think, 2 of them, and there's about 7 of them, somewhere around there. And they had done this previously, a couple of years ago, in the depth of winter. They had got their bikinis on and they had climbed for charity to raise some money. They climbed, it's not quite a mountain, Movamai, but it's a big hill. It takes about 3/4 of an hour to walk up it, somewhere around there. It's not mountaineering, but it's a fairly hefty hill. And in the winter, it can be bleak. Anyway, they organised it and they said, listen, we haven't done this for a couple of years, but it's your 60th birthday on the 29th of December. So how about we do this? And you're joking. So I had this great little day where 6 bikini-clad ladies and myself, not in a bikini, but in trunks, climbed Movamai. And it was a really great moment. A couple of them are bikers, and that's why I mention the story, because it's got a connection to bikes. But it also has a connection to what I'm going to talk to you about now, which is charity work. Up until I started doing these rides, the only charity stuff I'd ever done would be attending an auction or something like that, or making some type of contribution. But when I started doing these early on the very, very, very first one I did, somebody, and I can't even remember who it was, said, John, you've got to do this for charity. You are either going to raise money or you've got to raise awareness, because you're going to have people following this trip. I think my first trip was up to the Arctic Circle on my own, and people are going to be interested in it. So you should have a theme. You should be talking about a charity, long story short. So that first charity I did it for happened to be a piggybacked another charity, and which was cancer research. And long story short, and I mentioned this in a previous episode, it resulted in me in actually having my lunch with Carl Fogarty, of all people, because they put together a function and he was there and sat next to me and blah, 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 which was great. And it was, if I didn't want thanks for doing the charity, but that was the ultimate thanks for me. Absolutely brilliant. And these bike rides have opened so many doors to me. The fear of me standing in front of a crowd of people, any more than I used to say, I could talk in front of 5 or 6 people, because I do that in my own job as an insurance broker. I'm often talking to 5 or 6 people who are directors of a limited company, let's say, and I'm sort of talking to that. It's an easy number to talk to. But once you start getting an audience of 20, 30, the more the worse, but certainly 20 or 30 people. I've never done it in my life, never done public speaking, couldn't cope with the idea of public speaking until these rides. And then when I started doing the rides, I suddenly realised, I've been quite happy talking about these, because it's fun. I'm not being opinionated. I'm not being asked opinions about. I think I always thought that if I was ever to stand up in front of people, it would have to be about insurance, because that's what I could talk about. I can't talk about anything else. That's my job. That's my career. And I used to just think, I don't want to do that. I've got no interest in that. And I definitely didn't have any interest in talking, and therefore bragging, it would be, about my own business. That absolutely hated the idea of doing that. I'd been asked quite a few times to be a mentor to people. Would I please get up there and say what it was like to run your own business, in particular in insurance, talking to other insurance people? I just couldn't do it. I just froze and just said, no, I can't do this. It would come over that I was bragging, showing off. Don't want to do it, won't do it. But these trips were totally different. I knew that I could actually stand up and just do some sad stories about people I met, Holocaust victims, people with very sad stories from World War II, and then happy, funny stories about people I met, funny stories about different coincidences that happened along the way. So suddenly that opened a whole new world to me, really. And that then tripped into, of all things, a local radio station, which was just a community radio station. Let's not get carried away. And they wanted to do an interview with me because I was doing one of these trips and they were interested, blah, blah, blah. And I did this interview. I didn't enjoy being interviewed. I was very nervous, didn't enjoy it at all. But afterwards, and I mean immediately afterwards, I went for a cup of coffee in a hotel round the corner, calmed my nerves down more than anything else, and thought, wow, I'd love to be a radio presenter. I don't want to be interviewed, but I would love to interview people because I like to listen to people. I'm doing all the talking here, but the reality of it is the reason I've got so much to talk about is because I've used these. I've listened to other people, and that's where your stories come from. So, long story short, I was back at the radio station about 2 hours later saying, listen, this is a community radio station. I understand it's run by volunteers. Are you looking for presenters? And they said, yeah. Within a few weeks of that, I had done a test program, which was a complete mess, but they corrected me where I was going wrong. And then I had my own program for about 2 years. Really, really, really enjoyed it. It was a big commitment and I had to quit then, but 2 years, fantastic experience. So suddenly I've gone from a person who didn't want to talk at all in public. I was only confident with a small group of people, small group of friends normally, or business acquaintances, but not strangers, to suddenly talking on the radio and being completely relaxed. No get on with it. Fantastic, which is why I can do these podcasts now. So that was one thing. And then the talks raised money and awareness. Awareness, I think, was just as important about different charities, blood bikes that I did, first responders, different charities. And I could choose the charity that I wanted to do the next ride for, which also inspired me. And then ultimately, all the way down the line, I was doing a ride for the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, which is a great ride. Recommend every biker to join in with that. Fantastic. Runs throughout the world, not just in this country. You all get togged up and dressed up for it. Great thing. And I was doing this ride, and I came across a guy, Ian Pulston Davis, who is an actor. He was on Coronation Street, but he's been in many other things. And I got chatting to him, and he was very interested. He's a listener, so he was like, "Wow, he's a biker." So he was asking me about these trips that I did, and of course I'm enthusiastic. "Oh yeah, I went to this, man. I went to Siberia," and I was telling him all these things. And he, "Oh wow," he said, "You should write a book." And I went, "Write a book? No." And he went, "Yeah, you should." And he said, "And you should do big speeches to 100 people, not to 10 people, to 20 people." I said, "Oh, I can't." He said, "Yeah, you can." And just his words gave me enough confidence to do it. And then you've got to have an opportunity. Writing a book is incredibly time-consuming. It really is. You write it and you rewrite it, and then you rewrite it again. It just doesn't come like this. Doesn't matter. I make mistakes. It doesn't make any difference. It's not a bother. But if you're going to put something down in writing, it's got to be right. It's got to be written correctly. You go back on a sentence and you think, no, that's not what I really meant. So opportunity, I would never, ever, ever have had the time, the inclination, opportunity, anything else to write a book. COVID kicked in. Suddenly I'm at home on my own. I was single at the time. I had a girlfriend over in Czech, but we didn't have a great deal of opportunities to see each other because the travelling was restricted. So I'm sitting at home doing nothing like everybody else. So I wrote a book and I got it published. And then I wrote another book. And that was another thing that spun out of all of this. So all these videos that I'm doing, these podcasts, really, I'm just hoping to inspire one person out there. If it's just one person, that'll do me, to ideally have the confidence to do it yourself. And I've said this before in an earlier podcast. If you're going to get on a motorbike and ride straight to Siberia, I'm probably going to criticise that and say, wow, that's a big, huge step. I didn't do that. My first trip years ago was to Belgium, which is 1 hour the other side of the ferry or the train, whichever you take. So it was a nice, easy ride, one straight road. And then the next time I went to Germany, and then the next time I went to Czech Republic, and so it built up from there. And then one day, all the way up to the Arctic Circle. So it's step by step. But nevertheless, unless you're going to go on a £20,000 bike, which again, I'm not going to recommend, I'm going to say to you, get hold of a nice, reliable £3,000 bike, let's say, something that's not going to let you down, especially if it's a Honda. They're the super reliable ones. But something that if it does go wrong and if it does get damaged and you're only insured third party, which you will be when you're abroad, at the very, very, very worst, you can get on a train to the nearest airport and just come home. And yeah, you've lost your bike. You can't do that with a 20 grand bike. No chance. Plus, I wouldn't be advising you to be riding a 20 grand bike with third party insurance only, which is mostly what you will get once you are out of the EU countries. So once you're in the more dangerous countries, you are just on third party only. And you've got to remember that. So, okay, so Western Europe, you haven't got a real problem with. Once you step out of Western Europe, then you're on third party only. Okay, so that's it. For today. One more programme to go. Just going to finish on one little thing, paperwork. Paperwork. Visas. I remember one trip that I did, which was 28 countries in 30 days. That was the biggest number of countries I went to, not necessarily the biggest mileage, but I think it was 12,000 miles, somewhere around there. And I had to apply for so many different visas, some of which were straightforward online, some of which you could actually get at the border, not many of them, and some, certainly into Russia, you had to apply for 6-7 weeks before, and you had to make your dates around Russia were very, very restricted. You got your visa and it said the 15th of June to the 21st, and you were in and out, and you had to exit on the same border that you went into. And incidentally, just finally on that, I built confidence on that. Not my confidence, but built their confidence. The first time I applied for a visa, they gave me 5 days into Russia. They were probably, I don't know because they didn't tell me, I think they were probably more nervous because I was on my own, because you can become a liability to a country. If something goes wrong, how are they going to get me out of there? They're going to airlift me on a helicopter. What are they going to do? They need to get me out of Russia. Whereas if you're with 2, 3, 4 people, you're going to look after each other. So my guess is that was one of the problems, and that's why they restricted me to only 5 days, and also having to exit on the same border control. So they had a proper control over me. Plus, when you got to the border, just like with many other countries, they ask you where you're staying, how long you're staying for, what your plans are, and you've got to have a story. You know, if you just stand there and say, I haven't really got a plan, they can refuse you entry quite easily. They can say, well, I'm sorry, you know, your plan is too vague. Anyway, the next time I applied, I did 3 trips into Russia. The next time they were much more flexible. I think they gave me 8 days then. And then finally, the last trip I did to Russia, they said, how long do you want to be there? Now, that didn't mean they were going to give me 6 months, but it did mean that I could have applied and most probably been accepted for 3 weeks, for example. I didn't have the time or the money to be in Russia for that long. I would have loved to have done it otherwise. So yeah, I think it was about 3 weeks that they would have been perfectly happy with. But more importantly, they had agreed on that visa that I could come in on one border, exit out of Russia through another border, and come back into Russia. So that meant that I could go to Mongolia and then come out of Mongolia back into Russia through a different border, and then exit back into rest of Europe through another border. Gave me so much more flexibility. It meant that I could, in my example, I came out of Russia. Came into Russia via Finland, but then exited through Belarus, through a totally different thing. So, again, you're building your confidence, you're building your knowledge, and they are too. So don't be afraid of the paperwork. Just make sure you get it all. 'Tis a bit of a pain, but there we go. Okay, hope you found that insightful. That was the end of episode 9. Shortly, I will do episode 10. As I say, that's the end of the podcasts for this series at the moment. I will do future ones of things that we're doing more up to date. For example, as I'm talking to you now, I'm a few days away from going to Isle of Man to watch the classic TT. So no doubt we've got some stories about that. And equally, because of Manor Park Classics very kindly promoting this for us and me being involved with them gives me this fantastic opportunity to talk about bikes, the different ones that I've had in my life, different experiences, some absolute beauties that come through here. Incredible. Anyway, there you go. Thank you.